First of all, I think we need to acknowledge that our understanding to autism is really historically based mostly on what we understand about autism in boys and men, and this is simply because of the prevalence racial differences. However, we gradually understand more from the lived experiences of girls and women on the spectrum that not all experiences related to autism, no matter its strength or challenges, are the same across different sex and genders. And in fact, sex effect and gender socialization effect can have huge influences on all aspects of our mental health and quality of life. So in general, because of the biased knowledge base in the past, it is important to acknowledge what sex and gender has an impact on our understanding of autism. Now, if you think about the possible impact based on this biased knowledge base, it is likely that the lack of understanding of how autism presents in girls and women would have a negative consequence to for autism to be recognized properly in girls and women. So addressing sex and gender effect would help with better recognition and diagnosis. And therefore, after that, the support or intervention strategies that can tailor better to autistic individuals of different sexes and genders can be created. Without sufficient knowledge of how sex and gender actually influenced the diagnosis, the behavior presentation, or the efficacy or effectiveness of different intervention and support strategies for autism, it is really hard to adequately address the sex and gender impact in autism support and intervention strategies. So this is an ongoing process. The better knowledge that we gain from individuals on the spectrum of a variety of sex and genders, the better that we can create more tailored intervention and support strategies for them. First of all, we do know that unfortunately, people who have an autism diagnosis tend to experience more mental health challenges across the lifespan. So that can span from a variety of neurodevelopmental conditions such as ADHD or learning difficulties to mental health issues like anxiety or depression, even severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, spectrum, or bipolar disorder, not to say very high-risk situations like suicidality or vulnerability to traumatic experiences and so on. Therefore, it is important to ensure that we support young people on the spectrum to be as resilient as possible to the life challenges that they may be experiencing that would impact their emotional well-being. And this is also to prevent more severe mental health challenges coming up at later stages of life. The more understanding environment, the better coping strategies that have been promoted or cultivated for young people, the more likely that they will be enjoying better life quality and well-being when they grow up. Now, for girls and women specifically, many of them might be under-recognized, therefore misunderstood, because of the hidden quote-unquote ASD diagnosis. So better understanding of ASD diagnosis would prevent them from being misunderstood, therefore not receiving the right support or intervention strategies. On top of that, we do know that some of the mental health challenges are more prevalent in girls and women in general. For example, depression comes up to be more challenging, especially after teenage. And this may be related to both biological reasons as well as social cultural expectations. For example, the hormonal challenges or changes in teenage can contribute to many of the mental health aspects, but also the gender role expectations can increase the stress for lots of girls and women on the spectrum as well. And not to say beyond that, for example, gender diverse individuals on the spectrum would face added stress because of the multiple status, including gender diversity and neurodivergent status. So with that understanding in mind, it is important to especially support girls and women and gender diverse individuals with autism with the lens of women's health, and also appreciating the effect of gender or gendered environment on their mental health. I would argue the easiest way is to listen more to autistic people, especially girls and women on the spectrum, about their life experiences, and really learning from their lived experiences about what's at stake, what's the most important or critical aspects that needs to be addressed, and what are the missing part that clinicians often either not being aware of or forget about, or they just misunderstand what's happening for girls and women on the spectrum. So talking to autistic people, talking to family members of autistic people to learn about their actual experiences, to me is the most important and also most informative way to improve our capability of supporting emotional well-being of autistic people, especially girls and women. And secondly, really just to enrich our knowledge base about how autism presents in different sexes and genders, and also how sex and gender may influence our current understanding of autism, including presentation all the way up to different support strategies, would be really critical as well. First of all, I think it is important to recognize the risk of autism being under-recognized or misunderstood in girls and women. Secondly, it is important to understand the intersectionality of sex and gender and other possible identity or minority status. For example, the gendered environment or gendered expectation can pose additional stress or demand to a autistic girl who do not present herself in a typically feminine way, and also having difficulty exploring the social communication environment. So this young person may be seen as very much atypical compared to other peers of the same age, and maybe more prone to be bullied because of being different. And the added layer of social motivation that they need friends and trying hard to make friendships may actually bring up additional strength for them to cope socially, and which can lead to exhaustion or even burnout or even other longer-term mental health impact. So understanding the unique life experiences associated with sex and gender is helpful in designing a tailored support and intervention strategy. And finally, it is also important to understand the intersection between mental health and physical health. There are some emerging literature suggesting that girls and women on the spectrum may be more likely to experience challenges in relation to, for example, the cycle, the menstruation cycle, for example, in terms of premenstrual syndrome or even PMDD. So having a women's health lens added on to our understanding of neurodevelopmental disorder, taking into account both physical health and mental health into our care planning for autistic girls and women is really critical. I would have to say that clinical knowledge is only accumulated from the actual interactions with people who have lived experiences, as well as accumulated scientific knowledge contributed by both scientists, clinicians, as well as people who have lived experiences. So building the collaboration in order to explore what's at stake for mental health and emotional well-being for autistic people is critical, and the information should come from autistic people who have different experiences with gender, who have different sex at birth, and to really take into account the variety that's naturally lying in the human population. This is the most fruitful information source that we can get in order to promote and improve our knowledge and intervention strategies for people on the spectrum. So really appreciating the diversity and emphasizing understanding the diverse experiences intersecting across neurodiversity, sex, gender, and disability, as well as physical health. I think that is what I myself trying to follow, but also I would like to share with all of you, and hopefully we can create a better world and better understanding of autism in order to support people who are on the spectrum across different sexes and genders. Thank you very much.